Hi everyone and welcome back to Northwestern Models TV, and today I'm going to jump into the world of 009. Now I've built N-gauge kits before and I've built plenty of 00 kits and there's a few air-gauge ones as well, but I've never done a 009 gauge kit. So the one I'm going to build for you today is the Hudson 4-wheeled 3-bodied plank wagon kit from Dundas Models. So let's crack it open and get stuck in. Right, well, as with any kit, we need to have a look and see what's actually in the pack. So let's just get it opened and see what we've got in here. So we've obviously got all the different parts for our wagon kit it's been basically sellotaped to that piece of card, and you can see we've got our wheels in there, some chain, and what looks like the main part of the body. We also have a sheet of instructions, so I'm going to have a quick scan through these as always, just to make sure I've got a vague idea of what I'm supposed to be doing, and then we can get stuck into it. Right, well, on the face of it, it all sounds fairly simple, so we'll just have to have a go and see how it comes together. Now it suggests that the first thing that we need to do is to cement the ends onto the floor, so that's our floor piece and our two ends are there, noting and then attach the side pieces, noting that the ends fit in between the sides. So we've got to make an open box. So let's get the parts off this bit of mounting card. Put those other bits to one side for a minute. So, first part we need is the floor. So it will break away, and we need an end. Another end. I'll leave that side on there for a minute and do the same with that end and that end. Right, I'll leave the side there for a minute. Right, so needle file, I'm just going to clean up the edges where the sprue has been, which isn't taking particularly long, it must be said, which is always a good thing. And again, let's do the bottom piece there, and the same with that one. Right, now then, hopefully you'll be able to see on the camera here that this is one of the end pieces. This is the inside of one of the end pieces, and we can see at the bottom here we've got an extra sort of ridge there. Now that goes on to the underside of the floor, I'm led to believe, because then the floor will fit on the top, plus it will then also allow us, when we come to put the chassis in, to make sure that the chassis is in the right place. So, on to the glue for today. The glue we're going to use today is the EMA Modeller's Plastic Weld. Mech Pack is just as good, or any other plastic glue will be suitable for this. The reason I'm using this type of glue is when I've built wagon kits before, I've always found it to be the best glue to use for them, because it's pretty quick, it does the job, and because it is a weld type, it will stick the parts together pretty quickly. You just apply it with a brush, as it's quite thin, so what happens is it softens the plastic, and as the vapours from the glue dissipate into the atmosphere, it bonds the parts together. So it's important that you try and keep things as square as possible and all lined up as well. So that's one end on. Let's see about getting the other end on. Turn that way around, making sure I get them the same way up. Yeah. And just run the glue into the joint. Now the reason why I've glued it on the underside is so that it's less obvious that there's a glue mark there. You know, we don't want to destroy any of the really nice mouldings that are present in the plastics. You know, we don't want to lose any of the nice detail that's there. So let's leave that to one side for a minute while I cut out the side pieces and get them prepared. Now I'm using some little mini cutters to cut through the sprues. You probably could get away with flexing the parts off or using a craft knife, but they're so close to the sprue, I felt that the side cutters, you know, they've done the job much quicker. So and without damaging any of the parts, which is obviously quite important as well. So let's just get rid of the marks. Now there's no sort of idea whereabouts these side pieces locate. There's no real location marks or tabs for them, apart from our instruction of they go over the ends. So the ends sit between the sides. Right. And although you can't see it, there actually is a little mark on the end, a little indentation where it must slot in to the end pieces. So the best way to put this together is going to be to literally line it up around the top of our wagon and around the bottom, and we can see that it does hang down the same distance to the bottom as the end pieces. So that is going to make life a lot easier for getting it all lined up. So let's see about gluing this side on. And gluing the side to the end. And we'll glue the top pieces in a bit. So that's one side on. So let's line up the other side, and do try and make sure you get the piece the right way around. Look at the reference photo or picture that is on the packet and in the instructions, as that will help you. This is what it's there to do. It's there to help you, get the wagon looking how it should do. Right. So that's together. Just all together. So there we are. We have created a little box. Now, if you wanted, and I probably will do actually, is I'm going to run a little bit of the glue just up the corners of each joint, just to get it all together and strong as well. I'm just going to be careful with it, because that way we can hopefully hide it with some paint later on. You know, if it does decide to melt away any of the detail, because it does have detail both on the inside and the outside, and it'd be a shame to lose that. Not only that, by doing that it also does just make it a little bit stronger as well, which is obviously a bonus. Right, so let's put the glue away before I get high on the fumes, because it is quite toxic, the fumes of that. So we've made our little box. So the next part is to attach the sole bars to the underside of the floor, cementing onto the locating bars of the ends. So that were those two little bits that I showed you earlier. It just does say there, note on the DM32 kit that the rectangular framing is on the underside of the floor. This is the DM33 kit, so we don't have to worry about that. So, sole bars, I think, are going to be these pieces here. So let's see about extracting that from there. It also means we're probably going to need some wheels soon as well. Yep, that's right. So on the underside we can see there we've got the little divots for the axle bearings to go into. So let's get the ends, these bits of chassis cut off from the sprue. Yep, so put those bits to one side. Let's dig the wheels out. Now the wheels and the bits of chain are in a separate little bag, which I can't quite break into, so let's cut it open. That's all I want out of here at the moment is just the wheels. I don't want the bits of chain at the moment. Come on. There we go. Right, let's put the chain to one side. Right, so first job, as with the other bits, is going to be to just quickly tidy up where we've cut these free from the sprue. Just making sure there's not going to be anything in the way of it gluing down nicely. Now then, for those of you who aren't entirely sure what 009 means in the world of model railways, it basically is the narrow gauge version of 00 gauge. So if you think of 00 gauge as your normal standard gauge railway, The narrow gauge version is like the little railways that you find in North Wales. And narrow gauge railways were found all over the country, everywhere you could find it, mainly in little industrial areas. So it would be used on like peat bogs or pottery systems, farms. They were used everywhere, and they were even used during the First World War in the trenches. So narrow gauge railways do have a massive, huge following in their own right, and it's certainly interesting that in the last few years that the mainstream manufacturers, or a mainstream manufacturer, notably Bachmann, have started to produce some 009 locomotives and rolling stock, and specific buildings as well, and other sort of accessories just for the narrow gauge range. So it's worthwhile looking out for those if you are genuinely interested in getting into narrow gauge. Right, so you will have noticed that I've not actually glued the chassis in yet. However, I have lined it up and got the wheels in and checked that they run, which they did until that one dropped out, because we want them to be fairly free running, so that when they go on the narrow gauge layout, that they're going to run. So I thought it was important to do that, get it running nicely before we start putting the glue in, to get it to hold everything in place. So once you're sort of happy, and it does sort of wedge itself in place, as you can see, that's when you get the glue out and again get it in on the chassis to the body. Now I'd say don't go particularly mad with it, because we just want it to hold everything in place, and we don't want to pick the wagon up later and the wheels drop out. Again, we don't want them absolutely so tight in there that they can't rotate. So do that, and just so now I've glued it all around. Just as the glue is going off, I'll just hold it in on the axle boxes, just to make sure that the axles are gonna stay in place and the wheels are gonna stay in place where we want them to, because we'll have a little bit of movement there, so which is good. So I was just reading through the next instructions, which is to fit the, cement the checker plate onto one end of the wagon and allow to dry. Now the checker plate is this big square lump here, and the detail is actually on the underside compared to all the other parts. So that's what was initially sort of confusing me. So we need to stick that on to an end first, and then yep, okay, one instruction at a time. So let's snip that off there and tidy it up while we're waiting for that to just dry off a bit. tag from under there as well. Right. So the checker plate is actually just one great big lump of plastic to just be stuck on one end, and it goes, it will fit just about between the detailing bits on one of the ends. And just to help make it fit in, I'm just going to file a tiny bit off the ends just to make sure that it does slot in there nicely. Right, let's see how it goes in there now. Yes, I think that'll go in quite nicely, and once that's held in place, that should be fine. So, again, out with the glue, making sure we've got it the right way up. Yes, wagon rolls, always good to know. Right. So we'll go in there. So, this is one of these where you need about 3 or 4 pairs of hands. So that's the checker plate on, and I'm just applying just a bit of pressure on it, just to make sure it stays on the end, just as the glue goes off. That should be okay. So we've now got our little bit of checker plate on the end there. Now I don't want to add any more glue onto that, because I think it's probably going to be quite delicate, that, but we'll see. I might add a bit more later once it's had a bit more time to dry out. Right, so if the chain link coupling is being used, cement the coupling blocks into place. See the diagram. The short lug on the coupling block should be used for attaching the chain, which should be about 5 links long. They recommend holding the chain in place by using super glue or 5-minute epoxy. If, however, you're going to use the BMO 009 couplings, they should be modified as shown in the diagram, and then glued to the wagon. The coupling blocks should not be used if the 009 type couplings are being fitted. That's the BMO couplings. So, as I'm not going to fit the couplings to it, I'm going to fit the coupling blocks to it instead, which by the looks of it are these end to here. Those look like the only bits left that would be for that particular process. So let's get them off. And you'll notice on one side of these that they have a thin little pin on them, and on the other side it's quite a thick pin head, like a rivet of some sort. You want the little pin head pointing up if you're fitting this type of coupling block with the chain. So I'm just cleaning again the end from where we've dug out from the sprue. Right, now you want the coupling block to be mounted pretty much in the middle of the wagon at each end. So on the end with the checker plate on, it goes on the end of that, on the outside of it, and on the other end it just goes literally smack bang in the middle between of the wagon. But you want it down. Make sure it's down at the chassis level. So this is going to be possibly a little bit fiddly. Let's see how we go. The good thing about this glue is you do get a little bit of time, not much, but a little bit of time to just get the glue on there and allow it to grab it. So that's one end on, you might just be able to see it there. Now to do the exact same thing at the other end. Again, making sure I get the part the right way up. There we are. So that's, as you can hopefully see there, is we've got the ends with coupling blocks at either end, which is always a good thing. Now I'm probably going to add the chain for the coupling later, because I think I would rather paint the wagon and then stick the chain on. It should be a fairly simple enough task that I probably won't need to show you. So moving on from the coupling section, says to carefully remove the brake handle parts from the sprue. The ring sprue around the brake wheel should be removed from the main sprue, laid flat surface downward on a hard surface, and the brake wheel gently cut from its sprues. Now the brake wheel is in this bit here, and I will tell you now that it is incredibly fine. It's a very fine bit of detailing on there, so that is why you want to make sure it is down on like your cutting mat, and you go in with a knife right next to it and just cut through the plastic that's holding it in place. Like I say, it's very, very fine, and you're not really going to have much chance of ripping it. Likewise, you don't want to damage it. So I've just managed to flip it over. Right. Remove any flash from the hole in the trunnion by passing a 1 30-second drill through it. Now the trunnion is this little flat piece here, and it does have a tiny little hole in it, and it does say to just open it out a bit. Now you could probably do as I'm doing, and just open it out a bit with a sharp craft knife, or if you do have a 1 to 30-second drill bit, by all means use that. So let's extract that. This is where you really want a clean cutting area, because these are really rather small. Right. Cement the brake wheel to the top of the pillar. Now the pillar is going to be this long piece, so let's remove that. That's out of the way. Now to me, I think I would have put the trunnion on first, and then put the yeah, so I want the trunnion on the post first. So this is probably one of those bits that would have been better to have been made out of brass or something. I have a feeling that brass would have been much better for this particular bit of this kit, with the parts being so small and fragile. Gotcha. Took a little bit of effort that to get that to grip in. Just opening up the hole in the trunnion a little bit more. Now I've got it wedged in the tweezers in the hope that it'll, yes, go on there. Right, well I've got hold of that. Let's flip that over. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the end of our pillar and then drop it onto our wheel so that the glue is holding the wheel in the right place. So I end up with a little bit of an assembly, which hopefully you can sort of make out there. We've got the wheel at the top here, our trunnion where the tweezers are holding it all together, which is currently still free to slide up or down, and we've got the base part there as well. So this is probably where the fun will continue, as we now need to stick the little brake assembly to the wagon. Now it goes on the checker plate end, and it goes right in the middle of the wagon. It doesn't go to one side or the other, it goes right in the middle, and it will go off at a bit of an angle because that's apparently how it's supposed to be. And then you just glue the trunnion piece on top. So moving the trunnion piece up the shaft a bit at the moment so that we can glue the base in place first and then sort the trunnion bit out afterwards. Yeah, like so. So add a little bit more glue around the base of that to give it a bit of strength and just to help us line it up a smidge. And we can open it out, pull that down, and we should be good to go with it. So right, now that trunnion's in place. I'd say that there is always a difficult part of any kit to make, and I think that is probably the fiddliest part of this one. So if you can master that bit, I think you can certainly get to the end, which we're not far off now, because we've only got a few components left on our sprue there. Right, attach, well this is it, this is the last part now. Attach the brake shoe mountings to the back of the sole bars. Use the set with the longer base nearest to the brake platform end of the wagon. That seems quite simple. And here they are in the middle, so we've got our 4 brake shoes there, and these ones here are the ones with the slightly longer base. You can see the base is a bit longer than those ones. So it's a case of cut them out and stick them in place using the diagram to assist you with whereabouts and how they're positioned. And you're pretty much good to go. So let's get them all off the sprue first. Like so, right, that's everything off the sprue. Sprue in the bin there. Right. Two. Three. And four. Right. Now then, looking at the diagram, the brake shoes go on the furthest side from the brake wheel assembly that we've just put together. So, the wagon that way up. Let's put it on there so we don't damage our brake hanger. I'll grab some small pliers. And it's a case of make sure you get the detailed side on the outside of the wagon. So these little brake shoes hanger things are handed, so just watch out for those. Right. So bit of glue in there. In with the brake shoes, making sure that the wheel will still rotate, which it will. Right. That trick seemed to work. The trick of putting a blob of glue on the wagon, more or less where we want it, and then drop the hanger into place. Lining it up as best you can, and then just give the wheel a couple of turns to make sure it still does turn. Right. That's this side. Not going to lie, this has been a surprisingly fiddly little kit to make up, but it has been rather enjoyable as well. I'm not actually sure how long it's taken. I imagine probably about half an hour or so. Well, there we are. That's That's the last piece on, and it's, you know, seems to vaguely resemble the the image. So if I hold that to the camera, you should possibly be able to see that we've got our little brake shoes in place on the underside of the wagon there as well, and the wheels still rotate. So that's our little wagon. Now, as it's 009 and it's basically the N-gauge version, it will run on an N-gauge track. Now this is my very old test bed, so yeah, put it on there. You can see that it does roll up and down my little test track there. I mainly use this for cleaning loco wheels and giving them a test and putting them on a rolling road or something like that. So yes, there we are. That's how to build the Hudson four-wheeled three-plank wagon in 009. So there we are. That's the 009 Dundas Models Hudson four-wheel three-plank wagon kit, and it's been a nice kit to put together. I've really enjoyed putting it together, and as a starter kit for anybody getting into 009, I think it's a really nice one to get started with, because it's, the sizes are 00, but it's the narrow gauge version, so it's sort of N gauge, or however it sort of works out. I'm sure you can understand where I'm coming from. But yes, it's a very enjoyable kit to make, and it's not take particularly long to do either. So anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, don't forget to give us a good old thumbs up. Also, do make sure that you hit the subscribe button as well, so that you don't miss out on any of our other videos which are coming along soon. So until next time, happy modelling.